All right.
Welcome to One Work, Five Questions with Donna Vitek and Dr. Mark Andrew Holowchak. Thank you for joining us tonight, Dr. Holowchak.
Thank you for having me.
I
It's a
can't
late
wait to
night
talk
session
about.
today.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Dr. Holowchak is a PhD retired professor of philosophy and history who taught at institutions such as the University of Pittsburgh, University of Michigan, and Rutgers University.
Blah, blah, blah. Say hello to Jefferson.
Hi, Jefferson. That's the real Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, it is.
Dr. Holowchak is the editor of Journal of Thomas Jefferson and His Time and author-editor of over 20 published books and close to 150 essays on Thomas Jefferson. And his list of books and locations of his published essays can be found in the video description. With our show, One Work, Five Questions, I'll ask Dr. Holowchak 5 questions on one work of Thomas Jefferson. Our 16th episode is Jefferson's 1771 letter to Robert Skipwith. I want to say Skipworth. I don't know why. And this is a recommended reading list for a young gentleman. So I can't wait. In our last One Work, Five Questions, we asked our viewers what books they might call if they had, say, $1,000 to begin a library. In 1771, Jefferson's soon-to-be brother-in-law, Robert Skipwith, asked young Thomas Jefferson just such a question. He asked for a collection of books for a private library suited to a Virginian gentleman who has 30 pounds to spend. This is the earliest letter in which Jefferson offers a recommended reading list, and it is the object of our conversation today. I'm Donna Vitek, and this is One Work, Five Questions. Are you ready for question number 1?
I'm ready to rock. Let's get with it.
Okay, question number 1. The first thing worth noting is that Jefferson cannot stay within the limits of the request. He offers instead a general collection, as I think you would wish and might in time find convenient to procure.
Yeah, I got to get the letter here. I lost it, but that's one of the things. Skipwith, writes to Jefferson on 17th July 1771. He said he asked for a letter. He asked for a library. He said, I would have them suited to the capacity, I'm quoting here, of a common reader who understands but little of the classics and who has not leisure for any intricate or tedious study. Let them be improving as well as amusing. And he's speaking of the books. Let them amount to about 5 and 20 pounds sterling, or if you think proper, to 30 pounds. So in Jefferson clearly can't, he says right at the beginning, I wanted to execute your request, and Jefferson says 50 pounds, right, sterling. And that's not what Skipwith says. He says, thinking therefore it might be as agreeable to you, I have framed such a general collection as I think you would wish and might in time find convenient to procure. Out of this you will choose for yourself to the amount you mention for the present year, and may hereafter, as shall be convenient, proceed in completing the whole. So it's sort of like, you can't, Jefferson's basically saying, you can't spend 30 pounds and get any kind of a library. What are you thinking? So he said, well, if you have 30 pounds to spend, I'm going to give you a list and you can use it and pick up whatever books from the list you want to pick up, basically, and then go from there. But no library can be had by 30 pounds. So let's get with it, Robert, right? So that's one of the curiosities here is that Jefferson, he's probably rolling his eyes or some such thing, thinking, why would anybody think you can get a library for 50 pounds? Remember, a pound today is something like it's a little more than a US dollar. So, and maybe that might be like, okay, I've got $300 to spend, and what can I get?
Not much today.
Certainly not much at the grocery store,
Right.
Where I was just at not too long ago.
Question number 2. Jefferson puzzlingly refers to a second column that might extort a smile from the face of gravity. I'm a bit confused. To what is he referring?
Well, yeah, the second column, if you look at, you don't find a second column in printed versions of the stuff, but in his initial letter, there was a second column, and
Right.
what
Yeah.
he's referring to is well, let me start from scratch here. Jefferson arranged his library according to the philosopher Francis Bacon's tripartite classification, where he talks about history relating to the human faculty of memory, philosophy is the second overarching category related to human reason, and the fine arts related to imagination. What Jefferson, and this will demand, unfortunately, a lengthy answer here. He's referring to the works of fiction, which he and he's as if to say, okay, you're going to look at how many works of fiction I'm recommending that you procure, and you might find that amusing, thinking, well, how can this be a serious library if these are works of fiction? So, and why is he recommending fiction? And it's a very important letter, if only for this particular reason. Jefferson is always interested in moral improvement all the time. And the books of fiction that he is recommending are books with strong moral content, right? Let me look at some of the okay, we've got under fine arts, we've got Miss Marmontel's Moral Tales, Don Quixote, which is indirectly, if you ever read the book, or as he writes it, Don Quixote. If you ever read Don Quixote, it's a wonderful book about a bumbling old man who thinks he's going to save the world's problems, and yet, everything, he lives in a sort of imagined topsy-turvy world. The Vicar of Wakefield, we got Tristram Shandy, Lawrence Stern's Tristram Shandy. It's a very funny book. Jefferson loved Lawrence Stern. He was his favorite writer of fiction, and his Sentimental Journey, which has sexual content, but it's just funny stuff that playing around with grammar. Stern, for example, has one chapter when he's writing his Tristram Shandy. You look in one chapter, there's one sentence in the chapter. Then he moves to the next chapter. Who the hell writes a chapter with one sentence? And so Jefferson just shows you that he did. Here it shows he did have a sense of humor in loving Lawrence Stern and loving the way Stern played with language. So that is the second column. Is that now why? Because, and I'll give you his argument. He says. He says, when you think about the human mind, the entertainments of fiction, I'm reading from him, are as useful as well as pleasant. And he asks the question, what about the utility of fiction? He says, everything is useful which contributes to fix in the principles and practices of virtue. When an original act of charity or of gratitude, for instance, is presented either to our sight or imagination, we're deeply impressed with its beauty and feel a strong desire in ourselves to do charitable and grateful acts. Like when we look at deeds of atrocity, we feel an equal repulsion. What Jefferson is saying here is that the works of fiction offer better moral examples because they're works of fiction, and they involve the aesthetic sense as well, our sense of beauty. So aesthetics lines up with morality. We look at good behavior and see beauty in it. Two independent faculties, the aesthetic sense and the moral sense, but they work together. So he, in a sense, he's asking that he wants people to read works of fiction so that we can reinforce the principles we already have in our moral sense faculty and become better persons.
Mm-hmm.
I want dog jumping up and down on my side here.
But see, and the funny thing is, when he was explaining that, what caught my eye is that they are pleasant and when well written.
Yeah. Well, Jefferson
He would love you.
I hope so. I do try to write beautiful sentences as well as
you do.
I love. as I've told you often, when I write, people are often highly critical of my writings, and I find that funny because I take great pride in crafting beautiful paragraph sentences in well-ordered books, books that have a logic to them, and even good titles for my books that give the reader a clear and distinct impression of what the book is about.
Yeah.
Right?
I think one of your books would be on his list.
I don't know. Well,
Question number 3. Okay, let's move to the enclosure. Does anything stick out or demand immediate attention?
well, one thing, he doesn't stick to his tripartite categorization of history, philosophy, and fine arts. He has the fine arts. And then, if you look at the list, look at how many books from the fine arts. Now, the fine arts, as I say in my recent book on Jefferson and the fine arts, are generally, they're an important part of a person's education.
Right.
For Jefferson, and for a male, especially of Jefferson's day, probably the least important part of a person's education. History is tremendously important, so is philosophy. But he's proffering Skipwith a large number of works in the fine arts, and that sticks out. And I suspect that is not because that is due to the sort of person Skipwith is, and not the sort of person that and I don't know. I tried to look up Robert Skipwith and find out what his profession was. Maybe I think he might have been a farmer or something, but he wasn't. He didn't become a lawyer or politician. So
Okay.
he's not saddling him with heavy duty works, heavy duties.
Yeah, I did notice there was a law, religion, and politics trade.
Yeah, there's only under law, there's only 3 reading. Lord Keim's Principles of Equity, Blackstone's Commentaries. Those were the 2 major. Well, those were 2 of the major work. Blackstone was tremendously important.
Yeah.
He's not saddling him with a lot under law, which is technical, filled with precedents and all sorts of things. So.
Wow. Do you think if we were to pick up some of these books, would we get to know Jefferson as a person, since these were his preferred books?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. A very good question. Is that one of your questions?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna do 6.
No, that's fine. It's a very good question because as a scholar, I'm glad you asked that, because as a scholar, I think to get to know Jefferson, this is why this list is important. I'm giving it to readers is because to know Jefferson, if you look at, this is the first of many, many reading lists that he gives people. And of course, they're going to change, but there are several things on that list that don't change over time. He's always going to recommend Lawrence Sterne. He's always going to recommend Blackstone under law. Under criticism, he'll always recommend Lord Keim's Elements of Criticism, Smith's Theory of Moral Sentiments, William Hogarth's Analysis of Beauty. So there's certain things that just will not vary over time. So a scholar like myself has to study those lists and to see which works are continually recommended. Those are the works that Jefferson integrated and became part of his personality.
Right.
I acquire those books. I buy them. I read them because they give you a portal into his mind. So excellent question, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's what I was thinking when I was looking at the list. I'm thinking, I want to try to read some of these when I'm finished with school. But I'm already behind on some books. Question number 4. Under religion, I don't see Jefferson picking out works that are religious. Can you explain?
Yeah, okay, let me go to religion. He says, Locke's Conduct of the Mind in Search of Truth, Xenophon's Memoirs of Socrates. Xenophon was one of 2 people who wrote about the life of Socrates, 2 major authors, Plato being the other. Epictetus, who was a Stoic moralist, who was a former slave. Antonius, in other words, Marcus Aurelius. Seneca, another Stoic. Cicero's Duties, calls offices here, which Cicero, very strong Stoic slant. Cicero's Tusculan Questions, disputations, we call them today. dealing with how to overcome death, how to deal with death. Natural religion, Hume's natural religion, Hume's essays. So these are philosophical work, other than we get to Stern's sermons. Lawrence Stern was also a minister who was a sermonizer. He was a very excellent writer of sermons. He didn't necessarily deliver them so eloquently, but his favorite novelist was also a minister, and he wrote sermons and was one of the most popular sermonizers because of the elegant eloquence of his writing style. So yeah, these are moral works. Remember, we talked of before, for Jefferson, natural religion is equivalent to morality, right? So he's not, he's not going to be talking about Anglicanism under religion or Catholicism or things like that. He's just going to be talking about naturalized religion.
I am going to highlight Stern's sermons as something to get to know. I'm wondering how much of an influence Stern's sermons was on Thomas Jefferson's relationship to God. What?
I don't think you'll find much there.
Much, oh, okay.
When he picks up, he also, two French sermonizers, Massillon and Bourdelot. It's just that these were good men who wrote good sermons. There's a lot in the sermons he would have certainly found objectionable. The metaphysical trappings, for example. But he certainly, it's just good men. And there was something in there, just like in novels, there's something from these sermons you can extract, like helping your fellow human beings in need, things like that.
Okay. Oh.
Whereas other sermonizers might have talked about, pray to God so that God will help you or get your money or whatever.
Right.
These are people that say, do what you need to do to help your fellow human beings and be good people and love your God, things like that.
And we can, yeah. So then, and that means something, that it was in the looking at the recommended list, there are a lot of philosophers, and then you have the sermons. So that means something, that the sermons made it to the list along with the philosophers.
Yeah, and I say that because when he is interested in morality, why is he including fiction? For its moral content. So you can easily see him understanding that fiction could go under religion or morality if he wanted it at times. Even history, the history books that he calls are books with moral content. Tacitus is one of his favorite historian, because he's always offering lectures on morality and stuff like that. So,
this is so interesting. Okay, question number 5. Finally, Jefferson includes works under natural history and natural philosophy. What is the difference between the two?
Well, this is a distinction that existed in his day, and roughly following Aristotle. The natural philosophy today would be like, for us, physics and chemistry. You're studying the elements of the fundamental things of nature, things that are changeable outside of human control. Natural history would be organic things, study of organic things, study of geology as well. Jefferson at the time, and a lot of people thought that the earth was, organic matter. Matter was alive, right? If you put a seed in the ground, what happens? It grows into a plant. So there has to be sort of like an animal spirit, some sort of a capacity for allowing something to grow. So they not everybody had a strong line between, things like rocks and toads, for example. There's a point, even Jefferson at one point tended to think that everything had some sort of animate principle in it. That was the notion of animism, I guess.
Well, I do see here, the Bible is listed under history and not religion.
Yeah, it's just, it tells you about Hebraic history, insofar as you can disentangle from the Old Testament and other books of the Bible what happened in Hebraic history. So, under history, modern history, he's interested in British history, French history, Spanish history, the big countries, early history of the United States as it's developing, and then the ancient histories, mainly, Greece and Rome, but, Hebraic history as well, as I mentioned, and
Mhm.
things like that. So
So I did get one book correct that would be on his list. I did guess. I have my list here of books that I thought Jefferson would recommend, and
what did you pick?
oh, I don't want to embarrass myself.
Well, which one did you get right?
The Bible.
Yeah, he had, he didn't think, we talked about before, didn't think much of the Old Testament at all. He thought a lot of the New Testament, and he thought a lot of Jesus. And people say, for all the criticism he received throughout his life about, throw your Bibles away, Jefferson's going to be president, whatever, he's going to collect them and burn them. He had a lot of respect for the New Testament. And his grandkids were surprised to say, I often saw my grandfather reading from the Bible. So it's a work that from which he drew much moral inspiration.
I was just going to say that's why there are some great moral lessons and to live by and inspiration. If nothing else, that's what you can get from the Holy Bible.
Well,
Wonderful.
he thought so. Yeah, he thought so.
Yeah, well, I did have okay. I did think he may recommend a book from John Adams.
Oh,
and maybe Abigail.
well, the discourses on the villa, that in Adams' two main books, he just didn't think too much of Adams' works because they were just suffused with Federalist sentiments and the need of strong government. And Adams always said checks and balances. Jefferson preached in his Republican writings freedom of the press, freedom to disseminate information, and the power of the people to run a government.
Mm-hmm.
Adams, and I'm not saying Adams was wrong. He might have been right, and Jefferson could have been wrong. Adams said, no, that doesn't work. He would have said, Thomas, that doesn't work. You need checks and balances, because you can't trust the people and you can't trust the governors.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I did put The Art of Virtue by Benjamin Franklin.
Oh,
yeah. And
he ever collected that work.
And then Conversations of Socrates and the Republic by Plato.
He expressly said he hated Plato's Republic.
Oh.
I don't believe that in the least, because I published a paper on what Jefferson really borrowed, the lessons he learned from reading Plato's Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Why he says he hated Plato's Republic, because Plato talks of a tripartite soul, a governing, ruling soul, and then you had a spirited soul, then an appetitive soul.
Mm-hmm.
3 parts of the soul, and correspondingly 3 parts to a government, a ruling class, and then a laboring class, and then a policing or warring class. Warriors are police persons, because women would be part of the warrior class as well. And Jefferson thought, well, the Christians just took that, and that's how they got the Trinity. The Trinity he thought was Trinitarianism. He thought was a colossal joke, and he got that from Plato. That's why, in large respects, he thinks very little of Plato's works.
Okay, well, I was off on that one, but he did have.
I weren't off, because I think it was an important work for him, whether he was honest about it or
right.
Not.
Okay. Wasn't so bad. Okay, so to end our show, in Thomas Jefferson, you note in your recent book, Thomas Jefferson and the Fine Arts, was about beauty being useful. Next week, we turn to traveling instructions he offers in 1788 to a certain Mr. Rutledge and a certain Mr. Shippen.
Yeah, I guess for my teaser, I would say, when people go on vacation and travel, do they need instructions? I mean, most people just go and they want to they want to see things, and sort of spontaneity seems to be an intriguingly important part of travel, right? Having to do it in a certain way seems to fly in the face of the sort of logic a person might have as a traveler. I want to have fun. I don't want to have a script, right? Because I'm getting away from my 40-hour plus job. If I want to sleep in, I want to sleep in. if you, whatever I want. And Jefferson, no, this is what you need to do. So,
I'm like Jefferson. I need an itinerary.
even on vacation.
Yeah.
Oh my
Not,
goodness.
it's not as strict as my day-to-day one, but I need to know what I'm doing every
There's
day.
nothing wrong with that. It's for certain people. But there's no question why he was so successful.
Yeah.
Everything was planned out. And I've said this before, this is part of the reason why I think it's just inconceivable that he could have had an affair with Sally Hemings for all those years.
Mhm.
For a number of issues, I think it's inconceivable. One of the greatest issues, psychological, a successful relationship, right? A successful amorous relationship requires a degree of spontaneity that he just didn't have.
I just made a note on my notes. He was not an impulsive man.
No. And I've said to when I taught classes on Jefferson over the years, I asked my students, would you, when we get through the material, would you care to hang around? Would you care to hang out with Thomas Jefferson? And most of them say, I love to read guy. No, he's no fun. So I mean, just he doesn't laugh. There's maybe one or two references in this 19,000 letters or so where he's telling a joke that I can see.
Yeah.
One is a letter to Maria Cosway, and we're going to have to get to that love letter.
Yes.
That was written on October 12th. I've just finished by the way, I finished a draft of that book on I don't know what the title is. It's the letters of Thomas Jefferson, Maria Cosway. I don't have a primary title yet. I just finished a draft of all the letters, and I have, to my thinking, rectified the mistakes of all the other people who have written on this relationship. So,
oh, wow.
Very sort of sad romantic tale. Anyways, we can talk of that when we get to that.
Okay. Would it be a great one for Valentine's Day in February?
It would. It would be it would be perfect, but it'd also be good for right around October 12th too, when they do that.
Okay.
I might not be around for Valentine's Day. You never know what can happen. I'm just teasing. I say that only because a very dear friend of mine passed away at the beginning of September back in Michigan, and he was younger than I. And when I say I might not be around, no one knows. So that's one of the things that happens. Okay, yeah. So that's my teaser before we leave. It's just I want listeners, viewers to think about, why do we really need a script for vacationing or for touring?
Well, to save time.
Sure, but like I said, not everybody goes on a vacation or tour to save time.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Holowchak, thank you so much. This was an enjoyable, well, they're all enjoyable, but this was especially enjoyable, learning more about Thomas Jefferson and his books.
I hope our readers, our listeners rather, find this fun. It's kind of fun to do this with you, Donna, and I think I like the concept a lot, just focusing on one word. So anyways, I'll let you wrap it up and we'll go from there.
Okay, if you'd like to contact Dr. Holowchak, you can reach him at mholowchak@hotmail.com or his Facebook page, Thomas Jefferson, Bring Him Home to Monticello, Citizens for Change. Dr. Holowchak is available as a guest speaker at your college or any groups that you have. And if you'd like an autographed copy of any of his books, they can contact you at your email address, correct?
Yeah, they can. I can add before we go that I won't be conducting tours at Poplar Forest, but I will be part of tours on November 1. They're doing construction, so it'll be November 3 and November 5. I have been asked to, not by the people, this is a private tour. That's why I've been invited. The people at Poplar Forest, as you know, will not have anything to do with me because of my views are not progressive, let's put it that way, or revisionist. They're veridical. But it's a private tour on November 3, November 5. If anybody in the area is interested, contact me, my email. I'll be answering all questions somewhere after the tour about Thomas Jefferson that anyone might have. So that I'm looking forward to that. Should be fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wish I could be in Virginia to go on the tour. And I'd be a thorn. I have another question.
Well, that's what it's all about. Hopefully I have answers.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Holowchak, so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time. Okay, well, we'll see everyone next week on our next episode of One Work, Five Questions. And thank you for joining us.